As you've been hearing on WBEZ, President Biden has stepped aside, endorsing Vice President Kamala Harris. So far, no Democrat has entered the ring to challenge her, but this does not yet make her the official Democrat nominee. There are several open questions. Will the Democratic Party move forward with Harris as the nominee? If so, she only has a few weeks to convince thousands of delegates to vote for her at the Democratic National Convention. Or will the party favor having delegates pick from several names at the DNC? Regardless, a historic convention is headed to Chicago next month. So, what's ahead for the city and the country? Here to discuss is Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson. Welcome to the show, Mayor.
Hey, thank you for having me, and good afternoon.
First, I want to know, what was your reaction to the news yesterday?
Well, first of all, I think everyone knows that I've been very supportive of President Biden and his administration. The work that he has done to transform this country is, quite frankly, it's unprecedented. One of the most, if not the most, pro-labor president in the history of America. His work to forgive student debt, the Inflation Reduction Act that was focused on transforming infrastructure around the country as well as addressing climate change. His leadership will go down as one of the most effective presidents in the history of America. And that's coming from a social studies teacher. Now, of course, once he made it very clear that he wasn't going to seek re-election and decided to endorse the vice president, Kamala Harris, I eagerly followed that lead. If I believe I was the first person in Illinois to actually declare my support for the vice president, and for me, it was easy. Many people know that I'm raising a family on the west side of Chicago. I have two sons and a daughter, and the look on her face for her to be able to see a reflection of herself as someone who will lead this country and be the most powerful leader in the entire world. That's a big deal for little girls across America. And as a father of a daughter, I was very much appreciative of the president's leadership in this moment, but also recognizing our ability to transform this country with the leadership of Vice President Kamala Harris. I'm grateful for the opportunity to be able to support such an historic moment.
I was just talking to Lynn Sweet, the Washington bureau chief of the Sun-Times, and I mentioned, well, Nancy Pelosi hasn't made an endorsement. Well, since we've been talking, Pelosi just endorsed Harris. And so now she joins people like Governor Pritzker, Senator Durbin. What do you want to see from Democratic leaders? And what do you say to people who have not yet endorsed Harris?
Well, it's very clear from her record. She's very competent and capable to lead this country. Her position and the work that she has done supporting women's reproductive rights, that's critical, particularly, as I said, I'm raising a little girl. She's 10 years old. My wife and I are very much excited about just having someone like Kamala Harris reaffirming what Chicago and Illinois has been made very clear, that we are going to protect reproductive rights and abortion rights for women. Her position and her support around mental health support services, I've shared this repeatedly. My older brother died addicted and unhoused because of untreated trauma, and the reopening of mental health clinics in Chicago. I've been on the front line doing that. We reopened the mental health clinic on the south side of Chicago in Roseland, providing mental health services on the west side of Chicago, on the lower west side of Chicago. That's important to us. And then our position around affordable housing. I put forth a $1.25 billion bond for affordable housing and economic development. So my position has been very clear. My message to people who, I guess they needed 24 hours to contemplate it. For me, it wasn't. It did not require, that type of deliberation. Vice President Kamala Harris has been on the front lines fighting for working people. I think the last thing that I'll say too is, she's also is the leader that launched the first ever White House Office of Gun Violence Reduction. The work that we're doing in the city of Chicago to build a better, stronger, safer city has been centered around investing in people, and her work around gun violence reduction is historic. It's monumental, and it's critical to cities like Chicago. So I hope that the rest of the world recognizes the leadership that I understood from the moment that President Biden decided not to seek reelection, that we will follow down this road of transformation by making history and electing the first African American, Asian American woman as president of these United States.
How do you recommend that she weather Republican attacks and the racist and sexist onslaught that we've already started to get an inkling of?
Well, it's something that unfortunately, is a real stain in our nation's history. It's also a stain in our nation's present. I've said this from the very beginning. There are a number of people who would like a rematch of the Civil War, and they made that declaration very clear on January 6th. Unfortunately, we have a former president and Republicans who are very much committed to the type of divisive elements that quite frankly have caused tremendous harm in our country. To be perfectly blunt with you, a black woman like Kamala Harris, Vice President Harris, is not unfamiliar with these type of attacks. And I believe what she has to do, and what all of us have to do, is recognize what our shared values are. And it's becoming increasingly more prevalent across the country, where cities are more and more unaffordable. And we're changing the tide here in Chicago. And the vice president and her commitment to affordable homes across this country is a top priority. And whether you are in a major city like Chicago, or if you're living in major rural areas in America, affordability is front and center. The fact that she's been on the front lines around student debt relief. And this is something that has challenged all Americans, where there are young people. As you know, that's an important part of my investment here in Chicago. But there are young people who are looking for opportunities, but unfortunately they are mired down with student debt. We have to just lean into the things that unite us. And again, from affordable housing to reducing gun violence, that has touched every single corner of this country. It really has, between mass shootings at parades, or mass shootings on the weekends, or mass shootings that take place in schools. I mean, these are challenges that we need someone like Kamala Harris, Vice President Kamala Harris, who's been on the front lines, challenging and taking on these powerful forces who do not want sensible gun laws to take place.
Mayor, I do want to ask you, though, about her criminal justice record, because she does face criticism from progressives. Does her record as a prosecutor square with your holistic approach to public safety?
Well, as I've said before, look, you have to have accountability and opportunity. It's both and. What is very evident, though, with the vice president, is that she recognizes that we have to do something that we didn't do 60 years ago, and that's to officially take on this war on poverty. And everything that she's doing, fighting for working families, after the 2008 financial crisis, she pulled California out of this national settlement with the big banks, leveraging her authority to win over, I believe it's like $12 billion for mortgage relief just for California homeowners. That's a big deal. That's what unites us, her commitment to public education as a former public school teacher and someone who benefited from public education, and someone, of course, who's sending their children to public schools. Her investment in mental health, $285 million just to hire more mental health counselors. That's getting at the root causes of violence in this country. That's where there's alignment. And again, we have to have accountability for those who participate and behave outside the lines of the law. That's why she's the right person to take on Donald Trump, because clearly he does not work outside. He certainly has had his share of criminal behavior, and particularly the criminal behavior to overturn an election. Right. So her leadership is something that this country benefits from, and it's something that is certainly aligned with what we're doing in Chicago.
Now, as much as you have supported President Biden, you have been critical of some of his policies, particularly around the migrant crisis and federal support. and also Biden continuing to financially support and supply Israel with bombs. Will you be pushing Harris on any policy decisions like these?
Well, what I've been critical of is that you had Republicans in Congress who did not support, President Biden's bipartisan immigration reform policy that he had worked out with the Senate at the time. Look, his executive actions that he has taken have certainly sent a strong signal to his desire to make sure that we have sensible immigration reform that allows for this country to still continue to be a nation of new arrivals, but also making sure that there's a process that we can adhere to so that there isn't stress and strain at the border, hiring more judges, border patrol officers. That was all worked out with the president and the Senate. It was the Republicans in the House who took their directions from Donald Trump that caused the delay. Look, everybody is in agreement that hostages should be released and there should be a ceasefire. There's maybe I shouldn't say everybody. I will say this way, that it's very clear the city of Chicago and our position, we've said from the very beginning, just like we condemned the attacks against the Israeli people, innocent people, where Hamas attacked innocent people, and we came out in very emphatic terms condemning those acts of terror. But we've also been very clear that hostages must be released and we have to have a ceasefire. There are thousands of people who are being bombed and harmed every single day, and that's not good for anyone. Am I going to continue to hold up to my values? Absolutely, and those are the values of the American people. The vast majority of American people want a ceasefire and hostages to be released, and that's the position that we will continue to hold.
Mayor, we're weeks away from the DNC. What's your message to the country before I let you go, to the people who are worried about the potential messiness of the convention in August?
Well, how about this, though? Once again, the city of Chicago is is the center focal point at a very historical moment in our city's history. It has truly been my honor to serve as the mayor of the greatest freaking city in the world. And what I can assure people is this: we're going to have a safe, vibrant, exciting convention. It is my most top priority to make sure that the people of Chicago who are going to work every day and preparing for the first week of school the following week, that all of those services will still be provided. And look, I don't think it's a coincidence that at a time in which our country and our world, quite frankly, needs to unite around values that support working people, values that work to pull people out of poverty, I think it's actually quite fitting that the city of Chicago that said, keep hope alive, this is the city that said, yes, we can. This is also the city that Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said that if we can figure it out in Chicago, we can do it anywhere in the world. So I'm confident that our police department, along with the Secret Service, will make sure that the First Amendment right is protected and that we have a vibrant convention where the entire world gets to see and experience and hold an opportunity to enjoy Capital City, the city of Chicago.
We've been speaking with Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson. Thank you, Mayor, for joining us.
You're welcome, Natalie. Enjoy the rest of your day.